Today we'll be talking a little bit about AI agents. AI agents are autonomous software capable of performing tasks independently by observing their environment, that is in this case the context that we are providing to the AI agent, and then it has to execute specific goals, right? So that's an AI agent. And if you look at it, and agents used to already exist, right? Software agents. We used to always have agents all the time. I think that's so any function that you write is actually an agent in some sense, right? However, the only difference now is that we have an AI component, and typically that AI component has now been almost completely taken over by LLMs or VLMs, right? LLMs for to text type of scenarios, or VLMs for image to text kind of scenarios, right? So the agent, why AI agents are now so big is because they can handle complex tasks, which means that there is a certain amount of decision making that has to be done based on the input and the context that we are providing, right? And previously that used to be solved by writing very complex pieces of code, and we could write a lot of if-else statements, scenarios, checks, balances, a lot of things like that, right? And still I think there would be a lot of cases where we would get probably errors, or we would also get scenarios which we are unable to handle, especially for new scenarios. These are the scenarios where AI agents are making a lot of difference, because it's able to take in a wide amount of type of data, especially human generated data, right, where the data itself is not like in the form of a JSON or a database or something like that, right? This is data that has been generated by humans, like texts that people have written or spoken, etc., or things that or it could also be data which humans have created, like a photograph or a video, etc., right? So it has a human element, so which has a lot of variability, right? So it is not constrained in some sense like we do for the databases, etc., where we have something should be only string, there should be a number, it should have a certain range. So there are no constraints here, or very limited constraints there. So it is a human being's inputted data, and then we provide it a set of some sort of autonomy, the agent some sort of autonomy to make a decision about the input data. Now when we say autonomy, it does not mean that it can do whatever it wants, right? So we have to give it specific instructions, because eventually the output that we require, that is very, very specific, right? We want it to do something very specific to all the input data that we have, right? So but the autonomy is in making the decision of making those variability types of decisions, right? So you might say the same thing. For example, I might say that I'm very disappointed with you, right? But I could also say I'm heartbroken with you, right? And these two things, they mean probably the same, and in the action that you might have to take for both of these scenarios might actually be the same, right? But they could be slightly different based on how the instructions have been given to the LLM, right? Or in some sense, because if you are saying that the decision that you have to take is that that whether we want to give a grade 2 or a grade 1 out of 4 to a student, right, based on the teacher's instructions. So the decision between 2 and 1 has to be taken autonomously, right? That is not somebody is going to say if the word heartbroken is there, then you take 1, or if the word disappointed is there, you should take 2. This kind of very specific instructions cannot be given, right? So there is some sort of autonomy that these agents have to take up, right? The other things that they would be able to do potentially is that they will be able to learn and adapt, which means that after a certain percentage of the decisions that the agent has taken, right, can be reviewed by human beings, and both the instructions as well as the weights that are provided to the agents can be fine-tuned. And the other thing that agents can easily do definitely is tool integration, which means that now agents, they can look up our standard software databases, or have even some APIs, can call APIs, etc., etc. So it's like a combination. So it's like if a human being were to do a multi-step process, right, which means that first we get in some input, we check it with some database, and then we verify whether it is correct or no. Then we then send this data to somebody else, review it, and then we again take the final decision and then send it back to the user, right? Let's say that that's a complex process of that sort. Now these steps can be done autonomously by AI agents, and I think that's what has made a major change in the way people look at the way software engineering is happening now. And that's where is the huge revolution that's happening now in the transformation of enterprises from software or digital enterprises to AI enabled enterprises. So of course there is the good, bad and ugly associated with AI agents, right? So the good part of course is that they're autonomous, they can be self-reflecting, which means that even the decisions made by the AI agents can be reviewed by another AI agent, right? And then use that as a part of the feedback or part of the process, right? So in a way they can be self-reflecting. So there are ways of creating AI agents which have chain of thought, and there is an iterative improvement, which means that they basically they take a decision, review the decision based on different parameters, and then say that, okay, is this decision correct or not? If it is not sufficient, you can go back, do a different decision with some new input, and then you can continue, right? So you can have iterative processes which finally improve the outcome. And it can be multi-step process, of course, as I explained, but it can also happen in parallel. One of the steps can be done there. So does the strategy, planning and execution of this AI agents, now it's very much done by humans, of course, now, and then that itself is a big advantage of AI agents, because you can do really complex things fairly easily compared to what was probably possible with software, regular software engineering, right? But there are also the bad aspects of AI agent, because of the fact that we don't spend enough time with it as with case of softwares, because in software there is some human being sitting with it, checking whether it is working fine, making sure that it covers all the different scenarios. There is a testing phase for it, there is a QA, then there is a program manager who will make sure that it is according to specifications. So we spend a lot more time with it. Whereas if you take up directly and make an agent, right, you tend to spend much less time with it, and as a result of it, there are some unknown biases and inaccuracies which you may not even consider, right? You might say, oh, it's working, and then try to make it productionize it, and then you realize, oh, there are a lot of these issues that are coming, right? So and especially because the kind of data that we are actually feeding in is actually unstructured and also a wide variety, right? So we might not be able to even realize that there is a bias in the agent, right? So this is one of the biggest problems that people might encounter with agents. And the edge case handling, right, while there is a review and all of that, right, it might be in line or may not be in line with how human beings take decisions, right? So what would you do if there is something critical that an AI agent is a decision that the AI agent has taken, but would still need human review, right? How do you do that, right? How do you make sure that it is consistent, and that even if there is an instruction that is given, that between two decisions for similar or same input, what human beings would classify as similar input, it might actually do different, it might actually take different decisions. So this consistency is also one of the biggest problems that LLMs have, because they are in fact predictive texts, right, in the sense that they are generative text, sorry, not predictive, and they are generative models. And because they do generative, their output is generative, there could be a lot of variation within the generation. And is it consistent? Is it going to be consistent across time? Will there be a biases that will get set in? Will there be a drift in the kind of performance that we have? These are very important questions that we need to ask when we are trying to deploy AI agents. The human oversight, I cannot understate this aspect, that the human oversight over these critical or high stakes decisions is going to be very, very critical. And even though we are tending to rely more and more on AI, there need to be checks and balances that we all need to create and make it as a part of the process, right? Finally, I think one of the biggest challenges with moving from a digital enterprise to a AI-enabled enterprise is the cost of the infrastructure that it might occur, right? Something that would cost a few milliseconds of CPU time would probably take a couple of a few milliseconds of GPU time now, because we are going to run this on through an LLM, and that cost is there's a big difference in that cost, right, between the cost of GPU and the CPU, right? So I think for sure the what is it called? The world is actually trying to understand how we can come to terms with these bad aspects of the AI agents, and of course we'll come to some ugly decisions, because it's not very easy to say that it is good or bad or whatever. And then there are the ethical and regulatory guidelines that we need to come up with, as every enterprise need to come up with some ethical and regulatory guidelines, and make sure that whatever agents their teams or their extended teams are creating, they should follow those ethical and regulatory guidelines. Those there should be a way to review them, review these guidelines, and make sure that the AI agents are compliant with those regulatory guidelines, right? Then there's a big problem of the data security, right? So what kind of data is actually going into the LLM, right? What can we retrieve from there? What is there any privileged information that's going into LLM? These are some of the challenges that even very large companies like Microsoft, OpenAI, etc. have faced in the past, and are still trying to solve them. But we still need to create some guidelines as to how we can prevent certain types of input going into the data, right? Because the more you have human-like communication with the systems of your enterprise, the more likely you will have people trying to give them privileged data, or having some data breaches in that sense, right? So for example, like an LLM that is an agent which is trying to get some data or some APIs, maybe an unprivileged user might be able to use, even though they may not be able to directly access the API, they might be able to use the LLM to access that API, right? Or get information about that API from the LLM, right? So if the same LLM is accessible both to two different users, one with privileges and one without, we will have such issues, right? So I think this is one of the challenges that we would have, or the ugly parts of the AI agents. And then finally is the retraining cycle, right? So when we have AI agents and we see such a thing, like we have this kind of human drift, you have some drift in the data, or there is something that has changed primarily. For example, there is a management change, and the personnel have changed, or the regulatory guidelines have changed, or the user for which this AI agent was created has changed, and so on, right? So how do we retrain these AI agents for them to perform well, right? This is another challenge. And what is a cycle for it? How frequently should we do it? This is something that's also unknown. We probably don't have answers very clearly. So this is a broad set of the good, bad, and the ugly of AI agents. So to summarize, I would like to talk about saying that how one of the challenges that we need to understand is accurate. How do we identify whether to trust the output of your agent? Okay, we need to identify how to measure its accuracy and its consistency, right? The next thing is we need to clearly identify the difference between the AI agent's cost and the ROI that it is able to give you, right? So if you're trying to do something simple which can be written with a piece of code, which can be solved by a piece of code, or at least a piece of code can solve 99% of these cases, and you want to write an agent, or you want to use an agent to solve it, I think you will not get a good return of investment, right? Because every call, every AI, everything that is performed by an AI agent, while it is it's of less cost to build the AI agent compared to a software project, right? It might be less cost to build it. Every time this AI agent is used, it's almost 6 times the cost of running that software itself, right? Which is a code that has to be executed, right? So while the LLM costs are definitely coming down in some sense, it also means that we are using the LLMs much more in that scenario, right? So it's important to understand what kind of return of investment an enterprise is making before they invest on an AI agent as such, and they should also understand when not to use an AI agent and when not to use Gen AI. They need to make a clear use case by use case scenario which are the cases where to use AI agents and where to use regular software based solutions. Then finally, there is the whole ethical aspect of saying that can they replace the workforce? People are afraid now that if you introduce an AI agent, then they might actually lose their job, because whatever job that they were doing or what they were able to do, you would have somebody like they would probably be replaced by an AI agent, right? So while this could potentially be true for many enterprises, and actually many enterprises have taken such decisions where they have fired a lot of people because they think that they're going to be easily replaced by AI agents, there is still this aspect that there are many things which human beings are extremely good at doing, and AI agents will not be able to replace them. So it is important to train our workforce or the enterprise's workforce into doing the things or becoming better at things at which people are very good at, and letting the mundane and the repeated things which are of a large quantity over quality be done by the AI agents, right? So which means that we want actually people to be more productive. So whoever workforce we have, we need that workforce to use AI agents in the different scenarios to be more productive rather than replace them with AI agents. So I think that's also like the subtle calls that the enterprises need to make regarding how they want to deploy AI agents in their enterprise.